The morning sun filtered through the dense canopy of cypress trees, casting dappled light across the parking lot of a Food Lion in Chesapeake, Virginia. Susan Harper pushed her cart through the grocery aisles, her fingers lingering over avocados as she checked for ripeness. At 54, she had carved out routines to anchor her life, small rituals to fill the void left by the summer of 1988 when her only daughter vanished. The sharp chime of her cell phone, a recent acquisition from a store raffle, jolted her from her thoughts. She fumbled in her purse, nearly knocking over a display of canned goods. "Hello." Her voice was cautious. "Mrs. Harper, this is Detective Michael Vance with the Chesapeake Police Department. I need to know where you are right now." Susan's heart stuttered. For 6 years, she'd fielded calls about her daughter, Emily, and her son-in-law, Nathan Caldwell, all leading to dead ends. But the urgency in the detective's voice made her grip the phone tighter. "I'm at Food Lion, shopping." "Why? What's happened?" "Mrs. Harper, we need you to come to the Great Dismal Swamp National Wildlife Refuge. We found something related to Emily and Nathan. Can you meet us at the refuge entrance off White Marsh Road?" Her breath caught. "What did you find?" "We've recovered a blue Chevrolet Camaro from the swamp. We need you for identification. We've also contacted the Caldwell family. Can you be there in 30 minutes? The words hit like a punch. Susan's knees buckled, and she steadied herself against the cart. "The car, after all this time?" Her voice trembled. "Yes, ma'am. We'll explain more when you arrive." "I'll be there." Susan abandoned her cart in the aisle, ignoring the curious glances of other shoppers. Her mind raced as she hurried to her weathered Toyota Corolla. The 30-minute drive to the Great Dismal Swamp felt like an eternity, memories flooding back, memories she tried to bury. The police had insisted Emily and Nathan had run off after their wedding, a theory Susan rejected. Her daughter wouldn't have left without a word, not after the bond they'd forged through years of struggle as a single mother and her only child. But 6 years of silence had eroded her resolve, forcing her to entertain the possibility that Emily had chosen a new life with Nathan's wealthy family. The refuge entrance was chaotic when she arrived. Police cruisers and wildlife service vehicles lined the lot, their flashing lights cutting through the humid air. Rangers directed traffic, while officers cordoned off areas with yellow tape. Susan parked haphazardly and stepped out, her legs unsteady. A crowd had gathered, refuge staff, curious hikers, and officials in various uniforms. At the center was a flatbed trailer bearing a mud-caked blue Chevrolet Camaro, water still dripping from its frame. The windows were fogged with sediment, but Susan recognized it instantly. Nathan's father, Richard Caldwell, had presented it to the couple as a wedding gift, insisting on photos to mark the occasion. "Mrs. Harper?" Detective Vance approached, his face lined with the weariness of someone who'd seen too much. He was younger than she'd expected, mid-30s, with sharp eyes. "Thank you for coming." Susan couldn't tear her gaze from the car. "How did you find it?" "Let me introduce you to the people who can explain." He led her to a group of Virginia Tech students in university-branded shirts, their faces a mix of excitement and unease. A young woman with dark hair stepped forward. "Mrs. Harper, I'm Lauren Brooks. We're environmental science students studying wetland changes in the Great Dismal Swamp. We were analyzing old satellite images when we spotted an anomaly in a 1988 photo." She opened a folder and showed Susan a grainy image of a blue shape partially submerged in dark water. "When we enhanced it, we realized it was a car. Our professor thought it might be tied to a missing persons case from that year, so we calculated the coordinates and called the police." Detective Vance took over. "The area where they found it is deep in the swamp, remote enough to stay hidden all these years. The water's murky and thick with peat, perfect for concealing something like this. It took a 5-hour recovery operation with sonar, divers, and a helicopter to lift it out." Susan heard car doors slam behind her. Turning, she saw the Caldwell family arriving. Richard, imposing as ever, with his wife, Margaret, trailing behind, her face a mask of practiced calm. Their younger son, Ethan, followed, his expression unreadable. Susan's stomach twisted. She hadn't spoken to them since the bitter arguments after the disappearance, when Richard accused Emily of dragging Nathan into a reckless life. Detective Vance excused himself to brief the Caldwells. Susan watched Richard's face as he inspected the car, his jaw tightening in recognition. "That's the Camaro I gave Nathan," he said loudly, pointing to the license plate, NTC 1988. "Custom order." Susan approached, unable to stay silent. What was inside the car? The detective's expression grew somber. No remains, no blood, no signs of struggle. The swamp water degraded most evidence, but we found this. He signaled an officer, who brought an evidence bag containing a leather wallet, waterlogged but intact. Richard pulled out his own wallet, producing a similar one. "Nathan and I got these together in Norfolk, Christmas '87. Same shop, same design." Margaret's composure faltered. "Detective, if they're not in the car, where are they? What does this mean?" "We don't believe they sank their own car in the swamp. Especially not a wedding gift," Vance said. "Someone did this deliberately. This is no longer just a missing persons case. It's a potential criminal investigation." Richard's face reddened. "Criminal? You're saying someone targeted my son? Send divers back out there. Search for bodies." "We're already searching, Mr. Caldwell," Vance replied. "Our dive teams are expanding the grid as we speak." Richard turned to Ethan, his voice low but audible. "This is why you don't marry beneath you. Girls like that bring trouble, jealous exes, shady connections." Susan's temper flared. "Are you still blaming my daughter? Emily wasn't the one with enemies. If she wanted your money, she'd have stayed, not vanished." Richard rounded on her. "Your daughter was trouble from the start. Nathan was naive, and she took advantage of him." "Enough." Detective Vance stepped between them. "This isn't helping. Mrs. Harper, Mr. Caldwell, emotions are high, but accusations won't solve this." He guided Susan away. "Mrs. Harper, don't let him provoke you. Go home and rest. I'll call with any updates." Susan nodded, her hands shaking as she returned to her car. Through the windshield, she saw the Caldwells still arguing near the trailer, Richard gesturing angrily. The sight of the muddy Camaro lingered in her mind, a ghost from 1988 that shattered the fragile peace she'd built. Susan's small ranch-style house was oppressively quiet as she shut the front door. The adrenaline from the morning's chaos drained away, leaving her hollow. She stood in the living room, the weight of the day pressing down. The recovered Camaro, Richard's accusations, the wallet in the evidence bag. It all churned in her mind. Almost without thinking, her feet carried her to Emily's old bedroom, a space she hadn't entered in months. The door creaked open, releasing a faint musty odor. Dust motes floated in the sunlight, filtering through faded gingham curtains. The room was frozen in time. Emily's high school yearbook on the desk, a half-finished embroidery project on the nightstand, a denim jacket slung over a chair. The vibrant colors of 1988 had dulled, the fabric brittle from neglect. Susan's throat tightened. "Oh, sweetheart," she whispered. She opened the windows, letting the humid Virginia air sweep through, then grabbed cleaning supplies and boxes from the garage. If the police were reopening the case, they might need Emily's belongings. And maybe, she thought, it was time to pack away these relics of loss. She started with the closet, folding Emily's clothes, each item a memory. The sundress Emily wore to her first job interview, the scarf she'd knitted for Susan one Christmas. As she cleared the top shelf, her fingers brushed something unfamiliar, a man's leather belt, a Virginia Tech hoodie, a bottle of aftershave. Nathan's things. Susan's jaw clenched. She'd known Nathan stayed over occasionally, despite her disapproval. She'd raised Emily with strict values, emphasizing waiting until marriage, but Nathan's charm, his easy smile, his privileged confidence, had won her daughter over. Susan fetched another box and packed Nathan's items separately. A few shirts, a mixtape labeled for Emily, a pair of running shoes. She labeled it Nathan Caldwell Personal Items. The cleaning took hours. By the end, her back ached and her hands were raw, but Emily's room felt less like a tomb. The boxes were stacked neatly, each labeled. Susan loaded Nathan's box into her Corolla, debating whether to drive to the Caldwells' upscale home in Virginia Beach. The memory of Richard's venom at the swamp made her hesitate, but someone needed to take Nathan's things. The drive to Virginia Beach took 40 minutes, the modest neighborhoods giving way to manicured estates. The Caldwell residence was a sprawling colonial with white columns and a gated driveway. Susan parked outside, retrieving the box. As she stepped out, Richard emerged from the garage, heading for his Lexus. His face darkened when he saw her. "What are you doing here?" he barked. "You're not welcome on my property." "I'm returning Nathan's things," Susan said, holding up the box. They were in Emily's room. "Leave it there." He waved at the driveway. "Someone will handle it. Now move your car." Susan set the box down, biting back her anger. "I'm not here to fight, Richard." "Then leave." He climbed into his Lexus, lowering the window. "I'm heading out, and I don't want to see you when I get back." Susan returned to her car, pulling forward to let him pass. As he sped off, she noticed Margaret at the front door, watching. On impulse, Susan grabbed the box again and approached. Margaret opened the door, her expression softer than Richard's. "Susan, I didn't expect you," Margaret said. "Come in." "I just brought Nathan's things," Susan said, stepping into the foyer. Marble floors gleamed under a chandelier, a stark contrast to her own home. "I'm sorry about this morning." Margaret nodded, leading her to the living room. "We're all shaken. Richard's handling it his way." She gestured to a box of Nathan's belongings on the floor. "We've been going through his things, too." Susan set down her box, noticing another filled with Emily's items, a hairbrush, a necklace, a few paperbacks. "I'll take Emily's things if that's okay." "Of course," Margaret said. Then she hesitated, picking up a small wooden box from a coffee table. "We found this in Nathan's room. You should see it." Susan opened the box. Inside, nestled in velvet, was a silk scarf, deep red and clearly expensive. A card tucked into the lid read, "From Vincent." Susan frowned. "Vincent?" Emily never mentioned anyone by that name. "Neither did we," Margaret said. "It was hidden in Nathan's closet behind some books. Nathan was possessive. If another man sent this to Emily, why would he keep it?" Ethan appeared in the doorway, his face tense. "It's strange, Mom. Nathan would have confronted this Vincent guy, not hidden a gift." Susan closed the box. "We need to take this to Detective Vance. It could be important." "I'll come with you," Ethan said. "Mom, you okay staying here?" Margaret nodded. "Richard will be back soon. He won't like this, but the police need to know." Susan and Ethan gathered the boxes and headed for the door. As they stepped outside, Richard's Lexus pulled back into the driveway. He stormed out, his face flushed. "Ethan, what the hell is she doing here?" "We found something in Nathan's room," Ethan said, holding up the wooden box. "We're taking it to the police." Richard's eyes narrowed. "What is it?" "A scarf from someone named Vincent," Susan said. "Do you know him?" Richard's expression flickered. "Why would I? Probably some lowlife Emily knew." "Dad, stop," Ethan said. "We're taking it to the station. It's evidence." Richard grabbed the box, opening it. "A scarf? You're wasting police time with this." He tossed it back to Ethan. "Fine, go. But I'm coming with you. I'm not letting her spin lies about our family." Susan bit her tongue as they headed to their cars. Richard insisted on driving separately, his Lexus leading the way. At the Chesapeake police station, they learned Detective Vance was still at the swamp, coordinating the search. An officer, badge reading Carter, took the scarf and logged it as evidence. "We'll check for fingerprints, though fabric's tricky," Officer Carter said. "The shop's tag says it's from Bell's Boutique in Norfolk. High-end place. They might have records from '88. Richard's phone rang repeatedly during the conversation. He silenced it each time, his agitation growing. "Sir, do you need to answer that?" Carter asked after the third ring. "It's just work," Richard snapped. Ethan frowned. "Dad, if it's urgent." "It's fine." Richard cut him off. As they completed the evidence forms, Richard's phone rang again. Susan glimpsed the screen. No name, just a number. Richard declined it, but a keychain slipped from his pocket as he did. Susan caught a glimpse of a tag with a V before he snatched it up. "Dad, what was that?" Ethan asked. "Nothing. Office keys." Richard's tone was curt. Susan and Ethan exchanged a glance. Something wasn't right. Susan and Ethan left the Chesapeake police station, the tension between them palpable. Richard had stormed off to his Lexus, muttering about meetings, leaving them to drive back to the Caldwell estate together in Susan's Corolla. The keychain with the V tag nagged at Susan's mind. Why had Richard been so quick to hide it? And who was Vincent? Your father's hiding something, Susan said as they drove through Virginia Beach's manicured streets. Ethan's jaw tightened. He's been like this since Nathan disappeared, angry, distant. Mom says it's grief, but he trailed off, staring out the window. At the Caldwell estate, Margaret was in the living room, sorting through more of Nathan's belongings. She looked up, her face drawn. How did it go? We turned over the scarf, Ethan said. The police are checking it. But Dad was off. His phone kept ringing, and he dropped a keychain with a V on it. Margaret frowned. Could it be Vincent? Susan's pulse quickened. We need to know who this Vincent is. It's too much of a coincidence. As they spoke, a man approached the front door, visible through the glass. He was in his late 40s, dressed in a crisp polo and khakis, with a professional air. That's Tom Warner, Ethan said. Dad's driver. Been with him forever. Tom knocked, and Margaret let him in. Mrs. Caldwell, Ethan, he greeted, then nodded to Susan. Mom, I'm here to take Mr. Caldwell's Lexus to the office. He called about swapping it with your BMW, Ethan. Ethan nodded. Sure, Tom. Thanks. Susan's eyes caught a figure lingering near the garage. A younger man, early 30s, with a wiry build and a gold chain necklace glinting in the sunlight. She squinted, making out a V pendant. Her heart skipped. As Tom headed to the garage, he spoke to the man, his tone sharp. Susan cracked her car window, catching fragments of their conversation. Don't wear that, Tom said, reaching for the necklace. Boss said no. The younger man pulled back, but Tom grabbed the chain, yanking it off. Vincent, you know better. Susan's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Vincent. She glanced at Ethan, who hadn't heard. I need to run an errand, she said, keeping her voice steady. I'll take Emily's things and go. Ethan helped load the box in her trunk. Call if you hear anything, he said. Susan nodded, her mind racing. As Tom and Vincent climbed into Richard's Lexus and sped off, she made a split-second decision. Instead of heading home, she followed, keeping a safe distance. Her heart pounded. She'd never done anything like this, but the necklace, the name, the secrecy, it all screamed trouble. The Lexus wove through Chesapeake's commercial district, then turned onto Route 17, heading toward the Great Dismal Swamp. Susan's stomach churned. Why were they going back there? She let a pickup truck slip between them, her hands trembling as she gripped the wheel. The swamp's entrance appeared, and the Lexus pulled into the Washington Ditch Trailhead parking lot, less crowded now in the late afternoon. Susan parked behind a van, grabbing a trail map to blend in as a tourist. She watched Richard's Lexus park, and Vincent exited with Tom, who was now joined by Richard, who must have arrived separately. The three men headed down a marked trail. Susan waited a minute, then followed, her sneakers sinking into the soft earth. She kept her distance, pretending to study the map as she trailed them. The trail wound through dense cypress and gum trees, the air thick with the scent of peat. Susan's nerves jangled as the path grew narrower, the crowd thinning. After 20 minutes, the men veered onto an unmarked trail, little more than a muddy track through tangled vines. Susan hesitated. Following meant leaving the safety of the main path, but she pressed on, her shoes squelching in the muck. The terrain grew wilder, the ground spongy underfoot. Mosquitoes buzzed, and sweat beaded on her forehead. She heard voices ahead and crept closer, hiding behind a cluster of ferns and a fallen log. Through the foliage, she saw Richard, Tom, and Vincent in a small clearing, standing on a raised patch of dry ground surrounded by swamp. Show me exactly where. Richard's voice was sharp. I need to know where you hid her body. If the police get too close, I have to be ready. Susan's blood froze. She crouched lower, barely breathing. Vincent walked to a patch of dense undergrowth, pointing. Right here, 6 feet down like you said. The peat was tough, but we used the tools you gave us. The casual mention of her daughter's body made Susan bite her fist to stifle a sob. Emily, buried in this desolate swamp. Good, Richard said, scanning the area. No one's finding this spot without exact coordinates. It's too remote. What about me? Vincent's voice turned desperate. You said you'd take care of me. The police have the car, and that scarf. You shouldn't have let me sign it. Richard's tone was cold. You were careless, Vincent. I told you to charm her, make Nathan jealous, not leave a paper trail. A signed card? Stupid. You said it had to look real. Vincent protested. Enough, Richard snapped. You've got two options. 1. Leave Virginia tonight. Disappear, no contact, no money. 2. Confess to the police. Say you were Emily's ex, jealous and unhinged. You killed them both, buried her here, sank the car. Take the fall, and I'll wire $250,000 to an offshore account for your family. Vincent's shoulders slumped. Prison time. I have connections, Richard cut in. You won't serve long. Make your choice. Susan's mind reeled. Richard had orchestrated this. Her daughter's murder, Nathan's too. She fumbled for her cell phone, the signal weak but enough. She dialed Detective Vance, her hands shaking. Detective, it's Susan Harper, she whispered when he answered. I'm in the Great Dismal Swamp, Washington Ditch Trail, off the main path. I followed Richard Caldwell. He's with a man named Vincent. I heard them. Vincent buried Emily's body here, and Richard's paying him to confess and cover it up. Mrs. Harper, that's dangerous, Vance said, static crackling. Where exactly are you? She described the trail, the clearing, the landmarks. They're heading back to the parking lot now. Stay hidden. We're sending units. Don't move until we're there. The call dropped. Susan pocketed the phone, her heart pounding as she watched Richard and Vincent retrace their steps. She waited until their voices faded, then crept back toward the main trail, her legs trembling. The swamp seemed to close in around her, the weight of what she'd heard crushing her. Emily was here, had been for 6 years, hidden in this unforgiving wilderness. Susan crept back through the swamp's tangled undergrowth, her heart hammering as she navigated the muddy trail. The late afternoon sun cast eerie shadows through the cypress trees, making every rustle feel like a threat. She clutched the trail map, pretending to be a lost hiker if anyone spotted her. But her mind was fixed on what she'd heard, Richard Caldwell's cold plan to bury the truth about her daughter's murder. Emily, her bright, kind-hearted girl, lay somewhere in this desolate swamp, hidden for 6 years. Reaching the main trail, Susan blended in with a handful of lingering tourists, her legs shaky from fear and exertion. The Washington Ditch parking lot came into view, now a hive of activity. Police cruisers filled the space, their red and blue lights slicing through the fading daylight. Rangers waved curious onlookers away, and yellow tape cordoned off the area. Susan's breath caught as she spotted Vincent, handcuffed and seated on the curb, an officer standing over him. Richard was near his Lexus, arguing with Detective Vance and 2 other officers, his face red with fury. Susan hurried forward, her voice cutting through the chaos. He's lying to you. She pointed at Richard. I heard everything in the swamp. He told Vincent to show him where Emily's body was buried. He's paying him $250,000 to take the blame. Richard's head snapped toward her, his eyes blazing. This woman's obsessed. She followed me here, harassing me. Arrest her. I saw your driver, Tom Warner, with Vincent at your house. Susan pressed, addressing Vance. Tom took Vincent's necklace, a V pendant, and said the boss didn't want him wearing it. Then I followed them here and heard Richard offer Vincent money to confess to both murders. Detective Vance's face hardened. He turned to Richard. Mr. Caldwell, these are serious accusations. Lies. Richard spat. I came here to clear my head after seeing Nathan's car. This man, he gestured at Vincent, is just a security hire Tom recommended. I barely know him. He called him Vincent, Susan insisted. The same name on the scarf's card. And Vincent showed him where Emily's buried, off the trail in a clearing. Vance studied them both, then turned to Vincent. Sir, what's your full name? Vincent's eyes darted between Richard and the police, sweat glistening on his face. I want a lawyer. You're right, Vance said. He nodded to another officer. Detective Hayes, separate Mr. Caldwell and Mrs. Harper. No one leaves. To Vincent, he added, you're going to show us this clearing. If Mrs. Harper's lying, she'll face charges. If not, two officers escorted Vincent to a police SUV, while others grabbed shovels and evidence kits. Susan was led to a bench near the trailhead, an officer nearby. Richard was taken to another area, still shouting about his rights. The wait was agonizing, the swamp's stillness amplifying Susan's dread. She watched the sun dip lower, painting the sky in hues of amber and violet. After 40 minutes, a BMW pulled into the lot. Ethan and Margaret. They rushed towards Susan, their faces etched with confusion. Susan, what's going on? Margaret asked. We got a call that Richard's been detained. Susan took a shaky breath and recounted everything. The necklace, the conversation in the swamp, Richard's plan to frame Vincent. Margaret's hand flew to her mouth, and Ethan's expression darkened. That's insane, Margaret whispered, sinking onto the bench. Richard wouldn't, he couldn't. It makes sense, Mom, Ethan said quietly. Dad hated Nathan's choice to marry Emily. He called her a liability, said she'd ruin the family name. After they disappeared, he threw himself into work, never talked about Nathan unless forced to. I thought it was grief, but maybe it was guilt. They fell silent, the weight of the revelation settling over them. An hour passed before Vance's radio crackled. He listened, his face grim, then approached. The field team found human remains in the clearing. We're securing the site and sending them for forensic analysis. Margaret let out a sob, and Susan felt the world tilt. Ethan steadied her with a hand on her shoulder. Across the lot, Richard had heard the news. He lunged toward his Lexus, but Ethan moved faster, blocking him. Dad, stop. You can't run from this. Get out of my way, Ethan. Richard snarled. No, you owe us answers. Ethan's voice was steel. Officers restrained Richard, patting him down. A keychain clinked to the asphalt, the same one Susan had seen, with a tag reading Vin. Vance picked it up. Mr. Caldwell, why is this labeled with Vincent's name if you barely know him? Richard's lips thinned, his silence damning. Margaret stood, her grief turning to fury. You lied to us, Richard. Where's our son? She snatched the keychain, examining it. Her face paled. It's for the family crypt in Norfolk, where we store ashes. Vance's partner radioed the field team, then turned to Margaret and Ethan. We'll need you to show us this crypt. Ethan nodded. We'll take you. Susan, I'll call you with updates. Margaret and Ethan left with an escort. Vance approached Susan. Mrs. Harper, we need you at the station for a formal statement. We're booking Mr. Caldwell and Vincent. As officers read Richard and Vincent their rights, Vincent shouted, You owe me that money, Caldwell. We had a deal. Richard's face twisted. Not a dime, you idiot. You couldn't even keep your name off a card. They were separated into patrol cars. Susan, too shaken to drive, handed her keys to Officer Carter, who drove her Corolla to the station while she rode with Vance. As they left the swamp, Susan stared at the tangled wilderness that had hidden her daughter's body for 6 years. The truth was emerging, dark and painful, but it was the truth. At the Chesapeake police station, the air buzzed with activity. Phones ringing, officers moving with purpose. Susan glimpsed Tom Warner in the booking area, his earlier warmth replaced by a defeated slump. We arrested him an hour ago, Vance said, following her gaze. Vincent implicated him on the ride back. Richard and Vincent were processed, photos, fingerprints, belongings bagged. Richard maintained his arrogance, demanding his lawyer, while Vincent seemed to shrink, the reality sinking in. Vance led Susan to an interview room, its fluorescent lights harsh. He offered coffee. She declined but accepted water. I'm so sorry, Vance began, his voice heavy with empathy. No mother should endure this. Let's take your statement, then I'll share what Vincent told us. Susan recounted the day, the call about the car, the confrontation at the swamp, finding Nathan's belongings, the scarf from Vincent, following Tom and Vincent, and overhearing Richard's plan. Vance took notes, clarifying details. When she finished, he leaned back. Vincent Dunham, that's his full name, talked once he realized Richard wouldn't protect him. In '88, Richard hired him to pursue Emily, hoping to drive a wedge between her and Nathan. Richard saw Emily as unfit for the family's legacy. Nathan was set to inherit Caldwell properties. Vincent tried flirting, sending gifts, but Emily and Nathan were solid. They eloped, and Richard escalated. Susan's hands clenched. Escalated how? Richard paid Vincent and Tom to follow them on their honeymoon in Nag's Head. The plan was to kill Emily in a staged break-in while Nathan was out. But Nathan returned early, found them. Tom, he assaulted Emily after she was dead. Nathan fought back, tried to call for help. They hadn't planned to kill him, but he was a witness, so they did. Susan's stomach churned while rising. My daughter, violated even in death. Vance nodded grimly. Richard covered it up. He had private trucks, a boat to sink the car in the swamp, thinking the current would carry it away. The cottage was cleaned, evidence erased. No cameras in '88, so the police assumed they'd run off or had an accident. And Nathan's remains? Susan asked, her voice breaking. Found in the family crypt, in an urn under Vincent's name, hidden from the main Caldwell section. Richard played the grieving father, but he kept Vincent and Tom close to ensure their silence. A knock interrupted. An officer leaned in. Detect from the crypt team. They've confirmed Nathan's remains. Vance excused himself to speak with Ethan and Margaret. Susan was led to a waiting room. Plastic chairs, a water cooler, old magazines. Through the door, she saw Margaret and Ethan, their faces ravaged by grief. Margaret approached, grasping Susan's hands. I'm so sorry, Susan, for what Richard did, to Emily, to Nathan, to you. We're all victims, Susan said, squeezing back. You didn't know. If I'd suspected, Margaret's voice broke. Ethan joined them, his face hard. No one could have imagined Dad doing this. Vance appeared. Mr. Caldwell, I need your statement first. Ethan nodded, promising to update Susan and Margaret. They were separated for interviews. Alone in the small room, Susan let the tears come. 6 years of doubt, of wondering if Emily had abandoned her for Nathan's world, of defending her against Richard's accusations. 6 years of empty holidays, of clinging to fading hope. Now she knew Emily hadn't left her. She'd been stolen, murdered for loving beyond her station. Nathan had loved her fiercely, dying to protect her. The grief would linger, Susan knew, but there was relief too. She could bury Emily properly, visit a grave, bring flowers. The truth, though horrific, lifted the weight of uncertainty. She could finally mourn.